Welcome to Shiny Side Out with
Dave.
and Mecky. That's gonna do the voice AI some trouble. Goodness me, that completely threw me too, by the way. On WZZR, broadcasting from Australia for Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com, where it's more than just radio, so jump into the chat room if you can. This is show number 409.
9 and 400.
I think it still sounds good. It's on air, online, and on your smart device to grab an app to listen from anywhere or listen at home on a Grace tabletop digital radio. If you missed Solaris' show, which I only caught the last, I think, 10 minutes because I was fishing with the kids, with the tin lids, and it was a cyber witch cafe that she had on, and I'm so sorry that I missed the names, but it was really cool, I have to tell you. Solaris always has a great show with great guests, but the thing is, you may not have caught it. And the thing is that you can. Because all you have to do is subscribe to the archives for $5 a month. It's $5 US a month. And if you do that, you get access to, well, not only Solaris' shows, but our shows and all the other host shows for that matter. And you can download and listen to them, because that's what we do these days, in our own time. We don't wait for the major broadcasters to broadcast something any longer. That's for suckers. No, what we do, you see, we stream it all, we watch it in arrears, we watch it when we're comfortable. We don't plan our lives around the television, and I think big mainstream television outlets are completely aware of their dwindling audience, so far as to say that the only way that they could make money in the future, I suppose, is, I don't know, from an insurance claim for the destruction of their studios. Because, you know what, they got nothing. There really is so little on offer in free-to-air and all the ads. It's appalling. I prefer to pay a subscription and watch whatever I want, whenever I want, and more importantly, when I want to do it. Now, where's I mentioned that part? We acknowledge, that's Mecky and I, independently of each other, we respect and pay respect to the elders past, present, and emerging from the areas that we live in. I live in an area which is the Dark and Jung people, and Mecky, the people who are the custodians of the land where you live are
The Dirac people.
The Dirac people. And I think it's really important to know the cultural heritage of the lands that you're on, that we inhabit, because all of the things we've built upon the land are easily taken away by another ice age or, glaciation period, and then we'll have to inhabit them again. Mecky, I heard something really interesting this week. I heard, Dr. Carl.
Oh, yes.
So Dr. Carl, if you don't know who he is, he's like the Bill Nye of Australia. He's the science man. That's best put. I've got a number of his books. I've met him. I've talked with him, and I think he's a really nice guy, right? He rocks a Hawaiian shirt, I'll say. Now, he was saying just the other day, he was asked a question about what happens to the bacteria in the water when you boil it. Now, he missed the actual point of it. The point was, the answer should have been, well, we end up just drinking the dead carcasses of the bacteria, right? That makes sense, because they don't go away, they just die. So they're dead now, and we drink the water because it's safer now. We've killed the bacteria, and now we just drink it down dead. But he added something really interesting to say that if you pick your nose and eat it, there might actually be something in that which allows you to eat dead or broken viruses, charging your immune system. Now, I thought that was... He said that the jury hasn't, deliberated yet, but they're currently doing research on that. I was like, well, what? Okay. You know, the filthier you live in, the more mess you live in, the more contact you patch you have with, bacteria, I suppose. But that was a really weird thing for him to have to answer. This was like a viewer's letter, a viewer's question. Now, he's not really into all the social media business. He writes books, and they're really good. He touches on a whole bunch of science, which I think has evaded the mainstream. What are we really taught these days? Who knows? But yeah, wow, what a concept. Who knew? Did you know, Mackie, that we just drink the dead carcasses of the bacteria that we boil alive?
Yes, I did. And you should also realize that before we had penicillin, which effectively kills little critters quite well, we had something called serum therapy. Serum therapy is really, it's like vaccination in a way, right? And we've done completely away with that. So this has really broken up things that are injected in our bloodstream. And there are two other things as well I want to mention here, because most people might not know this. One, we have almost completely given up research into one area of medical sciences, which is called bacteriophage, therapy. Now, what, Mackie, is bacteriophage?
I know what the phage is.
Yes. Well, think of it in terms of bacteria then. Essentially, everything is eaten by something in this world. In this reality, everything is on the dinner plate for something else. That's a fact. It's a fact for viruses, it's a fact for bacteria, it's a fact for a whole bunch of other stuff. Now, penicillin, as we all know, is only effective for bacteria. No point at all. If you've got a virus, to take any antibiotics does you more harm than good. But let's say penicillin, any form of antibiotic doesn't work anymore. What do you do? Well, there was a case of a gentleman who came back from overseas holiday and got quite ill. Nothing helped. He had a bacterial infection, but none of the antibiotics worked. So his wife was desperate, did a bit of her own research, and found in the States, I believe, a lady, and I got to dig the details up. But since we're just talking, I'm just going to give you the rundown here. Who does research into bacteriophage, PHAGE, cures or therapies. What does that mean? So each single bacterium has something that eats it. That's a bacteriophage, right? It's like a plague upon the bacteria. And then she's identifying those, and lo and behold, she was able to help that man and restored him back to health. So if antibiotics are starting to fail, we will have to look into bacteriophage therapy. So that's 1.1, right? So if you are faced with that kind of thing, where antibiotics simply do not work for you anymore, do your research on bacteriophages and therapies. 2. We are entirely too clean. We live in entirely too clean houses. At the same time, not clean enough. Oh, Mackie, that doesn't make any sense.
We've cleaned ourselves into a corner.
We have, but not enough.
No.
Now,
But what would be the case, Mackie, that if we did that 100%?
That'd be fine. We just never leave the house.
That's right.
Okay. So we have a choice here, right? So we can go and clean 100% of all things, right? Like kill all the bacteria and all the little critters, in which case we've become bubble people. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Some people are, suffering from conditions that force them to live in bubbles, literally, not just figuratively speaking. But we don't. We don't clean 100% of all things, and we don't kill 100% of all things, which of course is a problem. Why, Mackie? It's not a problem. Yes, it is. It's a huge problem. Why? Because they say, we kill 99.9% of all bacteria. Whatever cleaning liquid you like, whatever little wipe you have, 99.9. Hey, you can put as many nines as you want behind that as well, right? But 1 or so, or a handful, or a few trillion will survive. Now, they will survive and they will pass on their immunity to a large chunk of their offspring. well, offspring in the sense of that
Mm-hmm.
the offspring really is themselves, because
They're
these are just
replicated. That's right.
asexual. Correct. They just replicate by cell division. No, but so what you're faced with is that we're too clean. It is much better to have some dirt in your life, especially for children. I remember we lived and played in dirt as kids.
Mm-hmm.
I played in dirt
I
all day
played in
long.
lots of dirt.
Right, and yeah, and in my day, and I'm an older vintage. In my day, we didn't have terribly many allergies. We didn't have terribly many asthma issues. There weren't too many kids that were truly sick. I mean, of course there were sick kids, but all these things we're experiencing today, especially in the allergy space, I think is due to the fact that we have become too clean. I recently had a conversation with someone around peanuts. And it turns out that it is quite likely that our peanut allergies stem from the fact that in the West, in Western countries, we process peanuts in all the wrong ways. We're changing the chemical composition of peanuts. And that change in chemical composition has led to this vast, pandemic, if you will, of peanut or general nut allergies. Funny thing is, I took a flight recently on Malaysian Airlines, Dave. I was brave, MH something or other, right? In fact, I had four separate flights.
See, I asked you, if you fly, I want to know the flight number. So I can track it on Flight Radar 24.
And maybe find me,
Yeah, that's right.
absconded with. No, but what I found astounding on that airline,
What was that?
I fly a lot, right? I fly with a whole bunch, normally with Qantas, but other airlines too, American Airlines. They were serving peanuts. I haven't seen peanuts on an airline in a long time. The little crackers, sugar,
because of people's
allergies.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah,
Because
I
someone
mean,
just
not
smelling
peanuts.
can affect them.
Oh, completely. You could have a peanut, and one peanut only, or even the hint of a peanut, and somebody could go into anaphylactic shock.
That's right.
Not a good thing. But no peanuts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, Malaysian Airlines. I don't give a hoot about your peanut allergy. Clearly, but what it tells me, of course, is that nobody on the plane had a peanut allergy. I would imagine.
That's right. That's right.
But it's astounding. Because again,
Meki, you've got kids. You know that you're not allowed to send peanuts to school.
Nope.
You're not allowed to even have peanut butter. In fact, you're not to have had peanut butter before going to school.
Yeah, it's getting to the point, and my kids aren't allowed to share food either with their friends. So everybody brings their lunch, or they've got something called crunch and sip, and they got the lunch and then morning tea or whatever it is. And it's like sort of three distinct times when kids eat.
Yeah.
In primary school, you know this, Dave, and you're not allowed to share your food. You're not allowed to bring any peanuts. In fact, in the childcare center where my youngest daughter was until recently, you're not to bring allowed any food. You can't bring any food at all. All the food is prepared on premise, completely allergen free and whatnot, right? Because I mean, these are serious issues. I mean, it's not like we're making this up. I mean, people are allergic, right? I mean, how it happened and whose fault it is moot, because it doesn't matter anymore. It's there. So we have to deal with it.
Do you know
I go on.
Do you know what my parents were firmly in the belief of, and I haven't researched it at all, except for just wanting to repeat this to everyone, that when I was a baby, my generation had as few allergies as the previous generation, though they were starting to increase, maybe with asthma. However, there was a treat that you gave your kids, like a breadstick, but it was called rusks, RUSKS, and they actually contained peanut. And because you gave it to them as they were still building their immune system, they became completely immune to the peanut. And there was none, as far as my parents were aware, of any cases which you suddenly discovered the peanut allergy in your child while eating these things and chewing on them, because it just basically made a paste and you swallowed it, right? Before, it was like when you were teething. So they were under the impression. Now, I thought that most of our allergies came as a result of the pesticides that were used in the Western food sources. but I can't. It looks like a correlation only between the use of those and the food crops that they're used on, and then the celiacs and the peanut allergies and the seafood and all these things that they came from. So I'm not saying that I know this is the answer, or I'm just saying this was the current research that I'm undergoing, trying to find any links possible. And at the moment, everyone's backing away from the cause and just saying, we need to, because it's so frightening. We don't know what's doing it, but it is seen. And Meki, your Malaysian Airlines flight highlights this, and it's the Western diet that has all the allergies.
Well, for the most part, and certainly in countries like America, Australia, and in certain parts of Western Europe as well, allergies elsewhere aren't as prevalent. Having said that, it's a fairly recent thing in Australia as well, because I speak to my friends that are of an older vintage here, and they weren't exposed to that kind of allergy. I mean, I thought in Germany maybe it's different. It was the same here. This allergy epidemic is in making of the last 30 to 40 years, and it's quite severe. And I believe, though, that the cause is multifold. There are many different avenues which have led us here, and I don't think there's a single reason why there is this abundance, you want to call it, of allergies. It just never existed before. Now it's all pervasive. It's frightening, and rightfully so. But I do believe, in order to forestall any further worsening of the situation, my suggestion is to let children play in the dirt, and not to be too pedantic about cleaning. Of course, you want to live in a clean house. Don't get me wrong. Wash your clothes and all that. Have a shower. That's all important. Of course it is. But let your child play outside. I mean, this is a huge problem we're having these days. Not just in Australia. Mostly, eat your pint of dirt. But in any way where it's a bit more developed and people have access to computers, computer games, sedentary lifestyles, we need to get our kids out there, playing in the wild, in the forest, in the street, in some kind of greenery where there are bugs and other things. And let them develop their natural immunities, and also have your child attend a maybe preschool or child minding service, where from an early age they're exposed to other children.
That's right.
And okay, they'll get sick, but they won't get sick. They won't get horribly sick. They'll just get sick with the typical childhood ailments, which I think is very, very important.
A 1 to 30 ratio of contact.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, avoid obvious things. If there's an outbreak of a really bad disease, keep them home. That's common sense. Let common sense prevail, says I. But it is critical for us to develop immunities. I'm going to talk about vaccination just for a second here, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I was vaccinated when I was a child. In Germany, all vaccinations are applied separately. And I know Dave's got something to say in a second about chickenpox. And here it's in a cocktail, MMR, measles,
right,
mumps,
yes.
and rubella.
Yep.
So that's not ideal, but this is it. Okay, so I know there are a lot of anti-vaxxers out there, and that's okay. Well, it's not really okay, actually. Vaccines work. Okay, vaccines work, and we know this because we don't see the pandemics, and we don't see the terrible deformities and deaths that we saw earlier on, and we see effects now of measles when we have a vaccinated population where the herd immunity is affected. I'll explain those terms in a second. So vaccination does work. Is vaccination safe? No, it is not. It is not safe for everybody. Okay, it simply isn't. Jim Sofra, yes, let them play outside, build a treehouse. I completely agree. Thank you very much. We're getting two chat influences here. This is so cool. So we've got the open chat, and then we've got the station chat on Skype. But yeah, look, the key thing here is to vaccinate. And no, it's not safe for everybody. Okay, but you have to ask yourself here, what is the greater of the two evils? Do we let these diseases run rampant? Or do we do something that will protect 95, 96, 97% of the population? Right? This is the choice we are making here. It's a very clinical choice. It's if you've been in the army, they understand, triage on the battlefield. Who can you help? Who can't you help? It's a tragedy each time something goes wrong, and things do go wrong. Okay, and I'm not advocating that it doesn't, but it's a choice we have to make. It's a choice the medical establishment made for us to some extent, and now the choice is being made by others to reduce our immunity as a group. So, coming to the term of herd immunity, the more people are vaccinated and immune to a certain thing, the better it is for all. Because some vaccinations hold better than others, but if less people are likely to get sick, there are less disease vectors available to spread in the population. It's simple, right? I mean, the less people can get sick, the less people will be sick going forward. Now, if you take people that are unvaccinated in the equation and say, oh, well, they're unvaccinated, but it shouldn't affect anybody else. No, it does. It does, because vaccinations are individually effective. They're not as effective in everybody in the same way. So somebody might develop great immunity, and that's awesome. They could be living with lepers all their life and they'd be fine. Others have a lessened effect of the vaccine. I mean, they're still immune, right? As long as they don't get in contact with a full blown case of measles or whatever it might be. So what protects those people though is the immunity of everybody, right? Herd immunity, right? That's the critical thing here. And if we take people out of the population that are no longer subscribing to vaccination, we're decreasing that herd immunity. Okay. Again, I want to repeat this: vaccines are unsafe, not 100%. It's simply not true. They're not, right? But it is the question here of what is the preferred scenario, all right? I mean, it's a terrible choice we're making, but in the end, I think we're better off vaccinating and being safe from these diseases, even though it might have a detrimental effect on some few. This is a fact. I mean, you can do your own science research, right? So anybody who says vaccines are completely safe is wrong.
That's right.
Anybody who says you shouldn't vaccinate is also wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, given Meki, that there's a list of side effects which you're supposed to stay within medical care for at least half an hour after receiving a vaccine, and if you present any of these items within the half an hour, urgent assistance is required on your behalf. If you, within the next 24 hours, suffer the majority of or any of the other symptoms that are suggested in the leaflet that you should have or be aware of for that immunization of something, then you need to seek medical attention. So if you didn't seek medical attention, then we would lose, I think Meki's right, I think, a percentage of the population if there was no medical care and only a vaccine, because the vaccine you may have, a reaction to. However, Meki, one of the things that I always thought was strange was that herd mentality perspective, because if you're vaccinated against, say, measles, and you come in contact with someone, I don't mean you make out with them. I mean, if they happen to be at the same place and same address and they didn't know they had measles at the time, but then, 5 days later that they break out and everywhere they've been since, is very important that everyone's contacted because you should be safe, right? That's the way that it goes.
But it's not entirely, because vaccination it's like anything. Human beings are individuals, and vaccinations work better in some and not as well in others. So it's not like
fair call.
It's not like if you're vaccinated, all right, that all of a sudden you're this is it, I'm good now. Not quite like it. Also, vaccinations do wear off, but the point is, all vaccinations don't affect everybody equally. Otherwise, everybody would either be super, never get sick, but people do die. So we know that certain vaccinations affect people differently, because we know that some people are very badly affected.
That's true. So it leads me, Meki, to this thing that my parents did when I was young, and I've heard some people talking about it recently in the last 10 years, and that is chickenpox. Now, chickenpox is not a killer, but it's better having had it when you're a child than when you have it when you're an adult. So when it became prevalent in a group of people, when I was going to school, there'd be suddenly, as a kid, we didn't know, we'd just go and hang out at that kid's house, for a while. So we all sort of got it. And then you wouldn't get it again when you're a kid.
Mm.
And so
Yeah.
by becoming exposed to it, it actually saved you later on. And that's the strangest thing, that you would intentionally do it. But I get the practice. I get why it was done, and that was because there wasn't something against it then, right? And I think it's really tough. And, you know, these decisions, I suppose, people make, and they make on their own, and governments are attempting at all costs to restrict our ability to make a decision on this and just have it mandatory. So in Australia, if you're receiving benefits from the government, you have to be immunised. So you have to have all your vaccinations. I'm not saying flu vax, right, but all the other mandatory ones. And so they've made it mandatory to have them. If you have a child that goes, you know, in contact with other children at a daycare centre or a primary school or preschool, then you have to have vaccinations. The child has to be vaccinated with their certificates. Isn't that
Correct?
That's the thing. Now in America, right, I'm aware that it's been, the argument has been put up that you should, as a parent, have a choice. I think if the choice was anybody's, it would be the child's choice, but they're not legally aged enough to be able to make the choice for themselves. So I think that's very difficult to argue pro-choice for a vaccination if it's for somebody else. Do you know what I'm saying? So I think that legally, yes, you can argue the point that you can want to have the choice, but in the end, you're making that choice on behalf of another person's life. And if they were ever to contract a virus, they should then be able to sue you for that choice that you made. If they were to contract the thing that you denied them the vaccine against. Does that make sense?
Mm.
And I think that you're just opening up a whole litigation channel here for people later on in life. And now, Mackie, I'm gonna liken this to something really crazy that's in our show notes, right? And that is catastrophism versus steady state. And in steady state, while nothing seemed to be going on, no one could make an appropriate decision based on there being catastrophes. They didn't see any. So if the world was going crazy right now, which it probably is, I think it is, geothermally and geoactivity and storms and cold and fire and floods and you name it, right? We've got it all going on at once. If there wasn't any of this stuff, it would be really hard to see. Likewise, we'd done so well with vaccinations, getting rid of, not smallpox. What is it? The polio and measles.
Polio. Now we got rid of smallpox, polio, measles. Yep.
Yeah. So we'd done so well with those that people didn't see it any longer, and therefore their choice seemed easier because they didn't see a prevalence of it. But when I was growing up and when my parents were growing up, it was even worse. That it was so awful in those days that kids were just dropping off the perch. They were dying as a result of these things. There was two kids in my school with polio.
Mm-hmm.
And now there aren't children at school with polio, right?
Not here.
No.
Yeah, correct.
So when you say, I don't want to vaccinate against polio, for instance, it's only because you can't see it. Because remember, Mackie, there was a time in history of science. Science believed that since you couldn't see bacteria, it didn't exist.
Well, yeah.
Do you remember that? Do you remember the science? I forget the scientist's name.
Little demons.
But you see my point, right? So I think, sadly, for the people who are making a decision whether they want to, have their child vaccinated or not, I'm not against choice, but I think you're setting yourself up for getting sued by the child, right, later on if you choose inappropriately. The other reason why you might be making the wrong choice is because you can't see it. It doesn't seem to be out there, so what's the point in doing it? as long as I keep my child close to me or something, right? Or they'll never come in contact with them. Well, that's, you can't ever say that. It's not a thing. And I think you need to reduce the risk as much as possible. But given the 5% might be allergic to the vaccine itself, and there might be other issues that, medical issues that come as a result. What? Mecky's right. I'm pointing at your picture in Skype. I'm pointing.
No, good
Mecky.
man.
I'm saying Mecky is right.
I'm shaking my fist in agreement.
Shake your arm, harder, boy. So Mecky's right. What's the greater risk? And I think it's SJ. SJ says polio was serious. Kids with braces, absolutely. So like I said, I had 2 kids with the full, foot to hip braces, just so they could walk. Yeah, and crutches, and oh man, it was terrible. One guy had a full back brace all the way up to the neck.
Mm-hmm.
Just rotten. Like, you don't want this stuff to happen. So, I'd have to tell you, my kids are vaccinated. I live in a country where it's mandatory. As mandatory as it's ever going to get. And, I don't know. I'd love to know just how close we got to the end of those viruses, because that's what the science was talking about. We almost completely eradicated them.
Well, yeah, but no, we don't. And, sorry, I'm just addressing the chat here. I don't want to mention any names, but we just have to agree to disagree on this, because I've looked at the research. I actually met Dr. Len Horowitz in Australia when he was giving a talk for the Nexus conference. I got his book too. And he was very much, I guess, against vaccinations to some extent. And I've done the research myself. I spoke to a lot of doctors in my family. And I looked at the statistics, I looked at the science. It simply is a fact that they're no longer, these diseases which used to kill thousands simply aren't anymore. But I'm happy to not debate it, but hear other opinions. But what I can see, though, is it's an effective way for us to fight these diseases. Like I said, though, I'm not saying that vaccinations are safe. This is the key difference. I'm trying to. It's a choice that was made. If it was made for you, if it's like in Australia, it's mandatory. The choice was made for you. If you live somewhere else, maybe you can make the choice for yourself. That's okay. But you need to look at countries where the vaccination is not mandatory or vaccination doesn't exist, and see if there is polio or measles or the pox, right, or any other disease that used to kill or disfigure or disable, cripple so many thousands of people. And the answer is yes. The answer is yes. It still exists. It's not the final answer. I hope we're going to get better.
Yeah.
I'm going to hope that stem cell research. I'm going to hope that some genetic research will lead us to other ways to avoid these diseases. We'll see. But I also need to remind everybody, and this is really quite timely because this is the show cycle where we're talking about it. This is the hypothesis show cycle, right? And why do I say this? Well, if the hypothesis, and it's not a theory, hasn't quite advanced close to a theory, not quite there yet. If it's correct, then none of this matters too greatly, because none of this is real. Not only that, we are in charge of this particular reality. Okay, what does that mean? And we discussed this at length 2 or 3 shows ago when we talked about the nature of reality. Could this be simulation? Could it be something else? There's some evidence that it could be something or another thing. And quantum physics certainly is very strange when you look at it from a classical physics point of view. It's completely non-commonsensical at all, if that's a term. It's non-commonsensical. It's now. So this is really a key thing to understand, that we are accepting these diseases and we are accepting death as part of life because we don't know any better. Okay? Let me say this again. We don't know any better. Some of us do, but there aren't enough of us that truly believe, truly understand, truly know that this is within our scope of change. We can change this reality. Funny, and I go back to the Bible. It's hilarious, right? But Jesus said, and I'm not a religious kind of guy, right? Certainly not a Christian kind of guy. But Jesus said, and I say this because most people understand who Jesus is, most understand who the Bible is. So that's why I keep quoting from it. There are other passages from other books that I could quote, but this is probably the most prevalent as far as understanding is concerned. He said, if you have faith, yeah, the size of a mustard seed, you can literally, not metaphorically, move mountains. And I come across this all the time. We have seen the power of mind, whatever mind is, and people are not quite clear on that either, or soul, or spirit, or car, or whatever you want to call this life energy. But it is clear to me, at least at this point, that the fundamental building block of this reality is our consciousness. That's what it is. Okay? So if you asked me, if a tree fell in the woods, and no one was there to hear it, would it make a sound? No. There's no tree, there are no woods, if it's not observed. Ooh, that's dangerous territory. It wasn't rendered. Thin ice. Now we're only using these computer analogies because that's the best way we have of explaining it. Now, think of it the way UFOs were described in the past. Flaming shields. Yeah, lights in the sky, chariots of the gods, right? In modern times, they're called unidentified flying objects, and we look at them as, they're saucers. Why on earth did we call them saucers? Well, because they look like saucers on teacups or coffee cups, right? In a time where there were no saucers, yeah, then they would be called saucers, but people had shields, and they had lights in the sky. They understood what chariots are, right? Chariots.
They knew what fire was.
Of the gods. Yep. Yeah, they knew all that. But we, in modern times, we've come to call them flying saucers because a lot of the craft that we observe resemble flying saucers. So in a similar fashion, right now, the way we look at the world, we are giving you analogies that we can understand. So we're talking about computer simulations. Do I think this is a computer simulation? Not even close. But it is the closest analogy that we have to where we are, right? So do I think we're sitting on some desktop somewhere? No, I don't. I think it's a very different situation, but it's very similar as well. We're just using the terminology that people will understand, right? That's really critical to understand. And sorry, Linus, you're right. It is. I completely agree with you that all diseases are within our healing capability. I want to say she, Lioness, but I could be wrong, so I do apologize if I got it wrong. It's completely correct. All diseases are dis-ease, right? The loss of ease within your body. Most of them are self-inflicted. Not all of them, but most of them. It's a lifestyle choice of our disease. But beyond that, our body has astounding healing powers. And again, I'm going back to mind. My favorite scientific dismissal is placebo effect.
That's right.
I love it. I love it.
We named it, Mackie. We don't need to do anything more with it.
It's like so there's a study out there. There's 50 people on that side. 50 people is double blind. Nobody knows who's who. And one group gets the medication or the cure, or whatever it is. Right there they go. Off they go. And the other group gets a sugar pill. That's the placebo pill, right? It's sugar. Now it so happens that a good chunk of the people that get the medication get better. That's great. Medication works. What you would expect is that none of the people get better that got the sugar pill. But not true.
The majority. Yeah. So they found the majority. Some people, not just some people, but in some certain tests, there was a majority of people who only had the sugar pill that got better without the actual medication.
Because they believed they
That's
should
right.
get better.
Because no one was told that they weren't receiving the medication, so they fully believed the thing that they were taking was going to cure them.
Correct. Do we all know what a mandala is? A mandala is a complex geometric, usually, design that helps you meditate because you focus on it. It helps you meditate, helps you do yoga, all kinds of wonderful things. Wonderful. But it focuses your mind. That's the point here. It focuses your mind so you can actually accomplish a good meditation, a good yoga session, whatever. Now, the pill here, the sugar pill, the placebo pill, is your mandala. It focused your mind's belief that you should get better. I can focus on this. The pill. Here's the pill. Here's a pill. I take the pill. Oh, I should get better now.
It's a thing. You can touch it. You can focus on it. And you can believe in it.
Yeah. Bingo. And again, it's your mind. The sugar pill didn't do anything for you. Maybe it gave you diabetes. It didn't do anything for you. Right? Nothing. Zero. There was zero effect. Might as well have given you nothing. But they didn't give you nothing. They gave you something. That something became the focal point, like a mandala. All of a sudden, you got better. There are cases of spontaneous cancer remission. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. No, it's not a miracle. It's you. It's you, or it's something in your environment. It's something that makes you better. I bet my bottom dollar that it is your mind that makes you better. It is your mind that has the power to do it. We can't do it consciously anymore. We have lost all, most of us have lost all conscious control over getting better. Right? We simply, because we're not taught about it. It's a nonsense. It's a complete nonsense, Mackie. What are you talking about? This is complete humbug. No. I mean, it's a placebo effect, and whenever that happens, I just want to strangle someone.
Well, it's why we called it the placebo effect.
Yeah, we can dismiss it. Oh,
That's
it's in
right.
the box now. Okay.
Yeah.
Placebo, there it goes.
Don't have to worry about that.
We should. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. We should be spending billions and billions of dollars on researching this so-called placebo effect and the ability of the mind to heal the body.
Big Pharma's going to love starting your car, Mickey, I'll tell you.
I know, right? Well, it's a $1 trillion industry, not billion, but trillion, thousands of billions.
That's true. Mm-hmm.
With knock-on effects. See, this is funny. Western medicine is about managing the disease and the patient, managing it. Eastern medicine, for the most part, and I'm talking about both the Vedic system and the TCM, traditional Chinese medicine,
it's
are
the P
about
word, isn't it?
managing. Sorry?
P word. It's the prevention.
Yeah, prevention and managing your lifestyle, right? So if you go to traditional Chinese medicine or even the Indian Vedic systems, you can't expect a cure overnight. Not going to happen. It will not. It simply won't happen. It doesn't work that way. With Western medicine, you get an immediate result. I got a headache. Here's your pill. Pop it. Oh, headache is gone. What caused your headache is still there, but you've switched off the pain receptors. Oh, I feel so much better. Thank you so much, doctor. No. The underlying reason for your pain is still there, right?
Do you know what's even better? I'm agreeing with you. Is that if you consume headache tablets too often, your brain will simulate a headache to get another one.
Yeah,
did you know that? They actually did a study on that.
Well, this is why drugs become ineffective after a certain time. You have to take more and more of them. More and more. You know what I mean? Chemo is actually there's both chemo and sorry, Linus again in the chat room. Chemo and then there's immunotherapy. They kill as much as they do not. And then sometimes you just don't know what killed you. Did the chemo kill you or the cancer? And would you have survived the cancer? Maybe, but then
if you didn't have the chemo, that's right.
Yeah, then the chemo killed you.
Chemo takes you to the very brink of death.
Yeah.
And that's the only way that they can deal with it. So I know because my mum, for 25 years had cancer and ended up, succumbing to it. Meki, I just wanted to bring up two things. So the word of the week for me was exhaustipated.
Oh, I saw that.
Exhaustipated. Brand, I love this. This is very author of. I'll get the movie in a minute. So exhaustipated is too tired to care, or too tired to give a poop, right? Yeah. That's so good. And not Arthur C. Clarke, the other one. Brain the size of a planet.
Oh, okay. You're talking about Douglas Adams.
Douglas Adams. It's very Douglas Adams style of putting two words together. But the other thing, despite all the things we've been talking about so far on today's show, the coronavirus in China, Meki, did you see that epidemic starting?
It's a new coronavirus. Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
And while they've lost, those infected range from 30 to 79 years old. So, it's certainly in your fit, not decrepit years. It's not just the young and the elderly. Correct. And there's 17 new cases that have started up with this SARS-like virus, very SARS-like. 650 people across mainland China and Hong Kong from 2002 to 2003, but that's how many it killed. But now they reckon there's thousands that have acquired this virus recently, and they're thinking that it's going to be completely awful. So in the airports, they have the body temperature sensors, the FLIR equipment, and those people with fevers have been identified and given masks and taken to medical assistance from the airport directly at the moment they're screened, because they've got a very high body temperature. They've established checkpoints. Mecky, this is one of those things. Now, Mecky and I have both talked about this till the cows have come home, and that is that, we're sort of due for another epidemic, possibly a pandemic, possibly. In Australia, we saw, patient 0. Patient 1 was my daughter in a bus load of kids coming from one place, and we ended up having Tamiflu given to us, because that's the last bastion of antibiotics that they can give you. There isn't another one more powerful. I mean, that's the end of that, right? And they were already giving that out in this because they knew how bad it was. We haven't seen this thing. So
let's hope it stays that way.
No, exactly.
No.
Right.
Well, but I mean, this is the thing, though, and I did travel. That's why I didn't join you last week, guys. I was actually in the air. My apologies. But I went to a conference, and the conference was held in Malaysia, and it had representatives from all over Asia Pacific, right? And that's like probably 200 people that came together in Malaysia and then flew back to their countries after 3 days. So it is no longer sensible to think that we are immune from these things, because people travel, get in contact with all kinds of people, right? This is what globalism has done for us. I mean, would I be traveling anywhere to these places if we didn't live in a global economy? No, absolutely not. I would not. But I am, and we are, so I do. And it's just what happens. And yeah, I know, right? And we can't escape it. I mean, I need to make a living, and Dave in a similar fashion as well. As his career progresses, he will go to more and more of these things as well. It's just what happens in life, and you have to make a living for your family, right? I got to put food on the table. So you make choices. I travel to places I'd rather not travel to. I've been sick where I wanted to die in some parts, especially South Asia. I just wanted to lie down and just to put me out of my misery. Let me just die now. That's how sick I've been traveling for work. And I don't think your body ever fully recovers from any of these. You get better and you're not sick anymore, but I think your body takes a hit. And it's just the way the quick crumbles. So there's a lot to be said to be local, to have a local economy. It is a lot more sustainable as well. But of course, you then can't have peaches in winter, or So it's consumer driven. People want to buy stuff all the time. In fact, the more stuff they're able to buy, the better it is. Really.
But Mackie, aren't we the most isolated country?
Australia, so yeah. Look, it still takes a bit of doing to get here. Having said that, if you look at Southeast Asia and Northern Australia, there really isn't much separating us from Indonesia, right? I mean, on a good day, you can probably walk across from Indonesia. I mean, I'm exaggerating here, but it's not that far. From every other point of view, you're correct. To fly to Sydney, let's call it Sydney, because Sydney is probably the linchpin for Australia. If you fly into Sydney from anywhere, the closest from another country, not counting New Zealand, is probably between 7, 6, 8 hours, something like that. Okay, so yeah, it is quite far, and we're very far from Europe and the Americas. We're very close, of course, to Southeast Asia, very close. But the winds as well as the currents have separated us quite effectively, or isolated us quite effectively from the rest of the world and the weather systems. So when Fukushima happened, I'll give you an example. So Fukushima is actually a lot closer to Japan is a lot closer to Australia than it is to the west coast of the United States, but due to the wind directions and prevailing winds as they are in the atmosphere, the jet streams and whatnot, as well as the ocean currents, none of the fallout came to Australia. It was all blown and I guess swept across into the west coast of the United States, or the Americas, I should say, because we simply weren't part of that path. So from that point of view, we are quite isolated. Our weather systems here are quite isolated. So what we're suffering here right now is an isolation weather system. Okay, we're heavily influenced by the Antarctic weather cycles, right, and equatorial certainly. But overall, if there were a nuclear winter or nuclear event in the northern hemisphere, Australia would be a good place to be. Same with New Zealand. Right, because the way the winds work, at least now, and the currents, not a lot, some of course, but not a lot of the radioactive material would come to us very quickly. It would take time. It would
between the hemispheres. You're right.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, as long as the system still works right now. But look, it's true. It's a thing. So yes, you're right, Dave. You're 100% correct. We are quite isolated, and we like to keep it that way. That's why we've got very strict biosecurity rules, and I always adhere to it. Whenever I bring something in that I think might be a bit questionable or is certainly mentioned on the card, I declare it. And a number of times I had to chuck it away. I brought in from Singapore. I brought in dried meat, sort of like a chicken and pork and beef. So beef and chicken were okay, but pork I had to leave. So I lost about $50-$60 worth of. It's like a snack. It's like a snack meat, right?
Yeah, right.
And it was just destroyed, I guess. Because
they destroy it.
Yeah, it was because of the pork flu virus or the pig flu virus. I wasn't aware of that at the time, of course.
Swine flu.
But then later on, it became swine flu. It became quite clear that that's what stopped. The meat that I brought in might have been swine flu free because it would have been processed.
But it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter because it's now part of the ban. And I always laugh at people with the show in Australia. I think it's called Border Security.
Yeah, it is Border Security.
And you see these people that bring in all this kind of stuff, and it's actually,
raw chicken.
Really? Yeah, you think this is a good idea?
Raw chicken in a bag. Yeah, that's going to be good. Yeah.
Yeah. SJ, you're correct, but it's not as affected as it should be considering the distance to Fukushima.
Yeah. So even with our isolation and our quarantine laws, we're only a plane flight away, 7 hours, and we could have someone, say, with that coronavirus mutation on Australian soil, and you wouldn't know, especially if it has a gestation period of, a week and a half or something before it's prevalent, right? Before it shows itself. That could be the thing that is the differentiator, right? And I think that's really hard. For the rest of the world, I don't know how they survive, to be honest. You know what I'm saying, right? If you could walk across the border, good luck with that, because you could walk across sick, or you could fly in sick, and it's much quicker,
Absolutely.
2 hours, 3 hours, and you could have people being in contact with others so quickly. And we talked about what it means, Becky, but oh my goodness, right?
Well, we've seen it. Ebola was brought into the United States. The measles were brought into Australia and in the United States, right? So now measles, I'll be honest with you, I thought, so what? Measles, so what? And then I did some research. Measles is bad. I had measles when I was a child, and I only remember being sick, as you do. I want to say maybe 7, 8 years old, can't remember, right? But I said to Mom, I had the measles. She goes, yeah. I mean, that was just a childhood disease. No, you were sick. You were really, really sick. So I guess you don't realize it when you're a child. I mean, you're sick, right? And your parents look after you, but I was very sick. And I didn't realize just how bad measles could be. So, come back after the music. Shiny Side Out with Dave and Mackie. This is show number 409 on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. There you go, and we're talking about the hypothesis again. We talked about a whole bunch of stuff. Yes, true, Linus. Measles are all difficult if the child is older. I also had chickenpox when I was, I think I was 18 when I had chickenpox.
Wow, that's on the
edge. Which was very bad. It was so bad that I almost cocked it. Yes. Some childhood diseases are better when you get them as a child. Others not. But some are definitely better to get as a child because they're not as severe. If you get older, there could be some permanent damage. Not to mention scarring. But it is what it is now. This show is on Revolution Radio, and Revolution Radio is a listener-funded station, which means if you're listening to this and you like it, why don't you spend $1 or $2 supporting the station? Right? We don't get any corporate sponsorship, so we can talk about anything we like, pretty much.
Unlike the governments of the world.
Unlike those, yes. As long as it's a good taste and it is free of any obscenities and so forth, naturally. We try to bring you as clean a radio program as possible, as does the entire station. So if you can, please do donate, or equally good, buy a product from one of the many sponsors. If you go to the homepage, which by the way also hosts the chat, it's easy enough to get in. Just register and boom, you're in there. And right now we've got 22 people online, so that's awesome. And we are having a conversation, which is of course the whole point of this. It's not just talking at people, but maybe with or even to people and having them talk back to us, if at all possible. So, now we are talking about the hypothesis. I understand Dave last week shared with you some insights into the pineal gland, and I believe very strongly that the pineal gland may very well be our escape hatch from this reality. It's a unique organ within the body. It is the only organ of its kind. It also calcifies with age. It is a very, very important organ in that it regulates our sleep cycles, night and day, all that wonderful stuff. And forever, throughout the ages, it has been regarded as the seat of the third eye, the soul, call it whatever you will. And you will find the pine cone symbol almost anywhere in the world, not obviously referring to the pine or the pineal gland in your head, but clearly in my mind at least, that's what it is pointing towards, especially if you think about the eye, right? We all know the eye. Do we know the eye? I hope we know the eye. It's the Eye of Horus. I'm referring to in Egyptian. It's like the Egyptian eye. I mean, whenever you've got something Egyptian happening, you look at this eye. It's an eye which has got like a little line and a curl and a straight line down, and it's got like an eyebrow on top of it. Now, if you take the cross section of the part of the brain that contains the pineal gland, it is a strong resemblance. excuse me. To the Eye of Horus. A very, very strong resemblance. Okay? And I don't think that was completely coincidental either. But if you look at other things, and I'm sure Dave has shared this with you, the papal staff, the catechus, right? It's the sign for the medical establishment. It's a staff which has got a winged serpent around it. On the top of it, what do you have? A pine cone. Anchor what? You got 3 pine cones right next to each other. Variously, the imagery of the pine cone can be like a pineapple-shaped thing as well. It can be the lotus flower, but it's mostly it is flanked by 2 things, usually, but 2 identical things. It could be peacocks, as the one in Rome, the pigna, for example, or pina. It could be elephants, as in the case of Angkor Wat, where it's actually the hairstyle of one of the deities that looks like a pine cone there. But it's always flanked by 2 things, which in my mind is an indication or a hint that these are the 2 hemispheres of the brain in which the pine or the pineal gland is embedded in. Okay. Interestingly enough as well, the Sumerian gods, Marduk specifically, others as well, have pine cones that they hold in their hands and give to each other, I guess. Really interesting stuff that Hitler's desk had 2 staffs, I guess, emblazoned upon it in 3 panels that had pine cones at the top of it. Pine cones. The Roman god Bacchus, or Dionysus in Greek mythology, carried a staff called the Thyrsus with a pine cone on top of it. So the pine cone motif is very much
Prevalent?
I guess all pervasive. Even the staff of Osiris, upon which the catechus is based, the design of the catechus, and again flanked by two snakes, right? There's always two things that are the same are flanking the pine cone imagery. And again, I believe it is the two hemispheres of the brain it is trying to emulate. So very important. Okay, so why though? What? And Dave would have gone, the seat like of the soul. It's all kinds of things are happening here. Some basics for pineal gland detox, and then he would have told you why it's important for us. Again, for me, pretty much an escape hatch out of this reality. I think that's where our dreams. That's where our, I hate to say it, but let's call it our soul, our energy body, whatever you want to call it, right? It manages to leave this reality through the gateway that is the pineal gland, which of course calcifies with H, the only organ gland in the body that calcifies with H. And guess what? All the governments in the world put in our water. Right? Fluoride. What does fluoride do? It calcifies the pineal gland. What? It's a fact. Okay. So you talked about detox, right, Dave? You took everybody through the detoxing.
Yep.
And you understand how important it is, hopefully, I hope. So, but how do you activate the pineal gland? Because you can detox it all day long, and you can be the healthiest pineal gland. You probably have beautiful dreams, you're probably very spiritually balanced, but how do you activate it so you can get out of this? The funny thing is, a lot of mystery schools, and I was part of the ceremony myself, which I can't really go into detail here, activate the third eye, the pineal gland, for you. That's what they do as part of the initiation ritual, the activation of the pineal gland. And this is, I'm going to say this because I want you guys to know everything. And a lot of the secret societies, I know this is going to sound crazy, but bear with me.
Here we go.
A lot of the secret societies, yeah, I know, right, believe that sodomy or buggery of specifically young boys activates the pineal gland. What? All of a sudden, all your private school experiences make a lot more sense, I'm sure.
I could only imagine how long their tool would have to be able to get to it. Anyway.
Indeed. Now,
that takes me back.
Opening, I'm sure it does. That takes you back. Opening the third eye. Powerful ancient practices for activating the pineal gland and expanding consciousness. Okay, the fundamentals of pineal gland activation. Okay, and this is about balancing the endocrine system. In both craniosacral work and Taoist practice, and this article is by Mantak Chia and Joyce Tom, the endocrine system is a critical gateway joining physical function with spiritual experience. The endocrine system includes the following glands: the pituitary, the pineal, the hypothalamus, the thyroid, the parathyroid, the adrenals, the pancreas, as well as the ovaries and testes. These glands use hormones rather than the electrical impulses used by the nervous system to affect changes in our body, emotions, cognition, and energy. Hormones are chemical messengers that circulate through the body via the bloodstream and coordinate critical body functions. They increase or reduce nerve impulses and can also act as neurotransmitters. The hypothalamus-pituitary relationship. Although the pituitary gland has often been referred to as the master gland because it appears to control the endocrine system, the hypothalamus plays a more crucial role in the system than previously thought. The hypothalamus receives and integrates information from the rest of the body and then secretes the neurohormones that release or inhibit key pituitary hormones. By signaling and directing the pituitary, the hypothalamus plays a critical part in the endocrine system and is important in a larger sense for pineal gland activation. The functions of the pituitary in physical health and spiritual awakening. The anterior lobe of the pituitary secretes 7 key hormones that are related to lactation, the release of testosterone, and the production of sex, thyroid, and human growth hormones. The posterior lobe does not produce hormones, but stores and releases two important ones made in the brain: oxytocin and vasopressin. Oxytocin fosters maternal instincts, bonding between mates, trust, and sexual pleasure. Vasopressin influences circadian rhythms, the reabsorption of water into the bloodstream, and also stimulates paternal, protective, and caring instincts. The pituitary relates to our growth and its health, is also important for pineal gland activation. When it begins to vibrate in synchrony with the pineal gland, we are inspired to grow and renew ourselves both physically and spiritually. The pineal gland is located in the center of the brain, behind and above the pituitary gland. Because the pineal gland is bathed in highly charged cerebrospinal fluid, or CSF, and has more blood flow per cubic volume than any other organ. Again, more blood flow per cubic volume than any other organ. It may well be the gland with the highest concentration of energy in the body. In addition to its high concentrations of CSF and blood, the pineal gland is also the dominant source of the body's melatonin. Now, what is melatonin? It is significant for its effects on our mood, immune function, circadian rhythms, and the quality and quantity of our sleep. Melatonin is also known as an anti-aging and anti-stress agent because it both suppresses cortisol and is a powerful antioxidant. The production of melatonin by the pineal gland is activated by darkness and inhibited by light. Once released, melatonin circulates through the brain via the CSF and enters nearby blood vessels for distribution to the rest of the body. When melatonin levels are disrupted, people can experience mood swings, depression, and seasonal disorders. In addition to producing melatonin, a healthy activated pineal gland also metabolizes other neurochemicals that coordinate physical and emotional processes on a cellular level. These neurochemicals, including pineolin and DMT, are said to connect the mind and body. The pineal gland plays a key role in the production of these neurochemicals because it has one of the highest concentrations of serotonin in the body. And serotonin is a critical precursor to them. Given its important role, it is not surprising that a healthy activated pineal gland has been connected with spirituality for millennia. Its pine cone shape is found in art and artifacts of many ancient traditions, where it is associated with enlightenment and immortality. Ancient Egyptians revered this tiny gland and even preserved it separately during the process of mummification. So just very quickly, the Egyptians used to take your organs and put them into little jars, right? And they found, or they believed that the pineal gland is so important that they actually gave it its own little jar. Okay. With its spines and spirals, the pine cone illustrates a perfect Fibonacci sequence, symbolizing growth and the unifying force that underlies creation, all embodied in an activated pineal gland. Spiritual traditions associate and activate pineal gland with the opening of the third eye of inner vision, insight, and wisdom. Scientific research is beginning to validate the relationship between the pineal gland and vision. Comparative research into the anatomy, physiology, and biochemistry of the pineal gland and the retina across a wide range of animal species suggests the two organs share evolutionary and developmental paths. Modern living fossils, such as the tuatara, have a photosensitive pineal eye with a rudimentary lens, cornea, and retina. Other species, such as frogs and lampreys, also have pineal eyes. In humans, pineal cells resemble retinal cells in composition and in the presence of proteins not found elsewhere in the body. Pineal light sensitivity is common across diverse species and in humans is connected with the opening of the third eye. Now you know what the third eye is. Dave, why don't you tell us about melatonin and the spirit molecules?
In terms of spiritual experience, melatonin quiets the body and mind, allowing access to higher consciousness. Both pineolin or penoline and DMT, secreted by a healthy, activated pineal gland, are psychoactive, causing changes in perception, mood, consciousness, cognition, and behavior. Penoline or pinealine enables visions and dream states in the conscious mind and has been used by ancient Egyptians and Zoroastrians in their rituals. It assists in DNA replication and is said to resonate with the pulse of life at 8 cycles per second. DMT is produced in the pineal gland during deep meditation and extraordinary conditions of birth, sexual ecstasy, extreme physical stress, and near-death experiences. It also alters our dream consciousness when it is released into the bloodstream during rapid eye movement phase of sleep. DMT links the body and spirit because of its relationship to visionary experiences and non-ordinary states of transcendent consciousness. Dr. Rick Strassman calls DMT the spirit molecule. The pineal gland, the activated pineal gland, can also influence our body through vibration. As we saw earlier with the heart, rhythmic vibrations can have a powerful effect on our cognition, emotions, and physical state. We know this intuitively, and we experience it directly when we sense the effects that music has on our mood, memory, and physiology. In the early 1980s, the French musician Fabien Maman researched the effect of sound vibrations on cells. He found that sounds can destroy cancer cells and invigorate healthy ones. Today, it is common for parents to play classical music to stimulate brain development in their children before and after birth. I think 64 bar cycles defines the length required for intelligence. That's my comment there. Rhythm entrainment, also called resonance, happens when two waveforms begin to oscillate together at exactly the same rate, when the hypothalamus and pituitary entrain with the pulsating vibration of the pineal gland. Our whole system can shift towards harmony. Taoists believe that the North Star is the source of the original pulse. Vibrations from this star were crucial in the evolution of the first forms of life on Earth. It is said that Earth's ability to support life is related to the planet's tilt towards the North Star, rather than being orientated directly towards the sun. This orientation maximizes the habitable surface and optimizes the environment for plant and animal life. Because of the North Star's strong power and influence, many Qigong exercises or Qigong exercises intentionally connect with the North Star. According to Taoists, the North Star emits pulsing vibrations which affect and activate pineal gland. When the pineal gland pulses in synchrony with the North Star, it receives cosmic information and relays it to the hypothalamus and pituitary through resonance. In turn, they send messages to the heart, which communicates with the rest of the body through its own electromagnetic pulsing. Besides being sensitive to light and vibration, the pineal gland activates in part due to exposure to magnetic fields. Studies with birds and other animals conclude that the pineal gland monitors magnetic fields and assists the body in orientating in space by acting as a navigational center. This magnetoreceptive capacity also explains why geomagnetic storms and environmental stress can affect the pineal gland, leading to problems with circadian rhythms and melatonin secretion. As we discussed earlier, the heart generates a strong electromagnetic field that permeates the whole body. When the heart is activated with the high frequencies of love and compassion, its electromagnetic field is amplified and expanded. The pineal gland's sensitivity to electromagnetic energy causes it to begin vibrating and activating in concert with the heart. As these two organs entrain together, their high vibration opens the third eye to greater inspiration, intuition, and inner vision. Because of the pineal gland's connection with spatial orientation and circadian rhythms, our perception of space and time often shifts when the pineal is in a highly aroused state. Such experiences have been mentioned by meditators and Qi Kung practitioners for millennia, and research is now providing explanations for these phenomena. Meki.
In Taoist practices, the region of the brain bounded by the pineal, the pituitary, and the hypothalamus glands is called the crystal palace. The crystal palace sits between the left and right hemispheres of the brain and between the forebrain of reason and the hindbrain of instinct. Many meditation practices mention the crystal palace, but some people have difficulty sensing it because these structures are inside the skull and cannot be touched directly. However, with a little practice, it is simple to connect with and activate these spiritual glands through our awareness and intention. The location of the pineal gland is often described as the center of the head. It is at the level of the eyebrows, above and behind the pituitary and hypothalamus. Behind the eyes, the optic nerves cross at the optic chiasm, or chiasm. Below the optic chiasm is the pituitary gland, which sits in the sella turcica of the sphenoid. Above and behind the optic chiasm is the hypothalamus. All three glands of the crystal palace are extremely sensitive and responsive to light. Prior to 2002, science was aware of two forms of light receptors in the eye: cones for color vision and rods for low light vision. I remember going through that in my psych neurobiology classes. Fascinating stuff. Anyway, in 2002, however, scientists discovered a third photoreceptor: cells in the retina that contain a light-sensitive pigment called melanopsin. These cells send messages to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or the SCN, of the hypothalamus. The SCN is responsible for controlling circadian rhythms, which influence our sleep, alertness, hormones, temperature, as well as digestive functions. When the hypothalamus receives information about the presence or absence of light, it signals the pineal gland to activate and to start or inhibit cortisol and melatonin production. Variation in melatonin levels causes a cascade of changes in the SCN, pituitary, and retina. The pituitary also responds to light through its release of vasopressin, which influences the SCN to adjust our circadian clock. In addition to the light detected by our eyes, studies now show that the whole body acts as a light receptor. Light shining through or on any part of the body can be detected, signaling the SCN and pineal gland to shut down melatonin production. Because there's so much ambient light these days, our systems rarely receive the deep relaxation that occurs in total darkness. Many people find that removing light sources from the bedroom can be helpful in optimizing sleep cycles, improving general health, and powerfully stimulating pineal gland activation and rebalancing. I have to say here very quickly, yes. Mm-hmm. Very important to sleep in complete darkness. I know that kids like night lights and all that, but complete darkness is important, and I have to change my ways because I tend to leave lights on, and my wife tells me not to, and she's right. She's correct. we should sleep in complete darkness because even though you might think you can't see that, your body can clearly still perceive.
You can sense
the light. 100%.
And look, to be honest, cell phones and tablets and televisions and all these things that we have now that illuminate are inhibiting our melatonin production, and it's very difficult to break that cycle and become tired, so they actually keep you awake. Yeah,
correct. And just to be clear, we are talking about the Qigong or Qigong practitioners in China, And these are the same. This is the same group that is being persecuted so severely by the Chinese government. Okay, and I think we might be onto something here. We might understand just why that is. And Dave, if you want to take us to the Qigong practices for activating the pineal gland and the harmonization of the crystal palace, it might become even clearer. Obviously, they're onto something, and the knowledge they hold is ancient and now, I guess, permeating our cultures.
Many Qigong, also known as Qigong or Qigong practices contain simple elements like breathing or tapping that can be used to activate the bones and glands of the crystal palace. And there's a few of them here, and I think there's 9 of them. And the first one is breathing. Various breath practices move the pumps, activating the pineal and pituitary glands, as well as stimulating the flow of cerebrospinal fluid. Breathing is said to ionize the CSF and therefore increase its potency. Number 2, tapping. Gentle tapping your forehead in between your eyebrows activates the pineal gland and all 3 structures of the crystal palace. The vibration sends a wave directly back to the pineal gland, activating it in the process. The same vibration also moves through the bones to the sphenoid, which in turn stimulates the pituitary gland that rests in the sella turcica. The vibration of the pituitary awakens the hypothalamus through the pituitary stalk. Number 3, toning. Toning or chanting sends vibrations into the crystal palace, activating the pineal and other glands and energizing the CSF. Chanting the 8 forces of the, Pakua, to draw in elemental energies is an exceptionally powerful exercise for activating the crystal palace. Now, if you'd like to know more, there's a book called Cosmic Fusion, written in 2007, available through Destiny Books, for complete instructions on chanting the 8 forces. Number 4, pressing. Pressing your tongue to the roof of your mouth activates the pituitary gland and, through its physical and chemical connections, activate the pineal gland and hypothalamus as well. Number 5, squeezing. When we squeeze our eyes, the muscular connections with the sphenoid activates the pituitary. Sucking in our cheeks moves the jaw, which stimulates the neck and cranial pumps. Contracting the anal sphincter and perineum sends vibrations to the muscles that envelop the anus and form the pelvic floor. From the pelvis, the vibration then travels up the spine and dural tube to the occiput. The intracranial membrane system transfers the vibration to the center of the head, activating the pineal and pituitary glands. Number 6, spiraling. Spiraling movements such as spinning the Pakua, the Tai Chi symbol, or our dantians creates an electromagnetic field that energizes the CSF and enhances the power of the heart field, thereby activating the pineal gland and other glands of the crystal palace. Number 7, 2 to go. Being in darkness. Darkness triggers increased production of the release of melatonin and eventually of the pinealine and DMT as a result of its effects of activating the pineal gland and helping to stimulate function of and open the third eye. Laughing and smiling. I tend to do this one a lot. Smiling opens both the heart and the crown, allowing more light to penetrate while also increasing the vibration of the organs. Laughing and smiling reduce stress and relax the body, which increases the flow of qi. Laughter also triggers the release of endorphins, promoting feelings of well-being. Relaxation increases blood flow, which amplifies the effects of the hormones released in the crystal palace and has an effect of the pineal gland activation. And the last one, this is focusing. Since energy flows where our attention goes, bringing our attention to the structures of the crystal palace will activate them. Note, Meki, you can read the note.
Sure. The Tao also emphasizes the importance of good diet and hydration. We are 70 to 80% water, and water is highly conductive. To increase the activation of the pineal gland and the crystal palace, sufficient hydration is critical. Additionally, a good balanced diet, high in tryptophan, is helpful in providing the building blocks for these important biochemicals. Where do I find tryptophan, Meki? And what is it anyway? Now, tryptophan is plentiful in many foods, including, luckily, chocolate.
Woo!
Seaweed, almonds, bananas, dried dates, sesame seeds, chickpeas, and peanuts. No excuse not to have any. Now, there's another practice here, spinal cord breathing. And it's the ultimate practice, or it's at least believed to be the ultimate practice for spiritual activation and awakening. And to understand how profound these Qigong practices are and how they kindle a natural spiritual experience and pineal gland activation without the use of substances, herbs, and other less organic methods, we need to look at what happens with the spinal cord breathing exercise that we will be introducing a little bit further on here. As we practice spinal cord breathing, the rhythmic pulsing of the spinal cord creates an electromagnetic field that charges the cerebrospinal fluid and enhances the circulation of this important fluid throughout the body, resulting in pineal gland activation. Increased flow shifts the electrolyte balance, the means by which the CSF regulates the body's ability to conduct electricity. The greater the conductivity, the more energy can flow through the nervous system, charging the cells and priming them for activation. Any psychoactive substances, such as DMT, that are released by the activated pineal gland also enter into the CSF, charging it even further. In spinal cord breathing, the movement of the sacrum transfers vibration up the spine and to the occiput through the dural tube. Connected with the occiput, at the sphenobasilar joint, the SBJ, the sphenoid also begins to vibrate, stimulating the pituitary. It's all about vibration, guys. At the same time, the rocking wave-like movement of the pituitary stalk activates the hypothalamus and milks the pituitary gland, which, as we know, is connected to the health and activation of the pineal gland. The milking of the pituitary releases more oxytocin and vasopressin, which heighten feelings of trust, relaxation, peace, and empathy while reducing fear, anxiety, and aggression. The pituitary gland is located above the sphenoid sinus, which drains almost directly down the throat. During the high levels of excitement, CSF may be excreted into the sphenoid sinus. Here, vasopressin and oxytocin mix with the already highly charged CSF and drip down into the throat, giving us the nectar, frequently referred to as soma, that is often described in spiritual experiences. So now you know what soma is. Both vasopressin and oxytocin are critical hormones during the birth process. Their presence in the nectar may contribute to birth-like experiences. The effects of these hormones on bonding may also explain the feeling of deep connection and unconditional love that is part of many enlightenment experiences. It's really interesting that these chemicals are involved. See, again, for me, the pineal gland is a gateway, and I think when another soul enters us into, or this reality, it does so through the pineal gland as well. So I think the birthing process, it's just my opinion, okay? I'm just completely spitballing here, but in my opinion, the soul, I think, enters, or who we are, our essence enters the body just prior to birth. I think. I think. That's just my opinion. This potent brew this nectar, travels down the back of the throat and into the stomach, where it is absorbed directly through the mucous membranes. Some of this fluid also enters the bloodstream later in the digestive process. In this way, the nectar is brought to the lower dantian for integration into the physical body, uniting heaven and earth in a metaphysical sense. During spiritual experiences, the activated pineal gland affects the rest of the brain through its influence on CSF, which completely immerses both the brain and the spinal cord. After bathing the brain, approximately half of the CSF gets reabsorbed into the bloodstream in the head. The other half leaves the head through the lymphatics, the drainage system. From the lymph, the supercharged CSF enters the body's bloodstream and is carried to the heart. Blood flows through the heart and vessels in a spiral motion, boosting the CSF's electromagnetic charge. These neural, biochemical, and electromagnetic connections between the brain and the heart may lead to ecstatic, heart-mind expanding sensations. The heart field is the strongest electromagnetic field of the body. When consciousness moves from the head to the heart, the field becomes stronger and more organized. When the head resonates with the heart's vibration, neurons in the brain fire differently, reducing mind chatter, that voice in your head that never shuts up, increasing the communication between mind and body and inducing further pineal gland activation. Thus, during spiritual experiences, the liquid light ambrosia of the CSF is active in all three dantians, enhancing their powers. Because the pineal gland is itself bathed in CSF, there can be a self-amplifying positive feedback loop that creates peak experiences. Moreover, since the heart field extends and can be felt at least 10 feet from the body, our experiences also have the potential for a ripple effect to our communities. Now, just very quickly, so these are the people that are being prosecuted so, I don't know, brutally, I want to say, by the current government in China, which to me was always a strange thing. Why would these people be? I mean, what kind of threat could they possibly pose? Now, the threat here is, of course, that they connect us to our real home, to our real reality, to where we should be, allowing us to escape. And the practices here are powerful practices that can bring into alignment this proper natural order, destroying our prison, if you will, our panopticon, the power of the elite, by simply outthinking them or replacing them with the proper frequencies and vibrations that we no longer experience. So it's actually a very dangerous group to have around. In fact, research by neurosurgeon Walter Penfield reported in 1958 that stimulation of the right temporal lobe of the brain led to patients reporting spiritual experiences such as seeing God, leaving their bodies, hearing music, and seeing the dead. Since then, studies by Peter Fenwick and Vernon Neppe also show connections between mystical experiences and the temporal lobes. Although the exact mechanism by which the temporals are stimulated is not yet known, it may be that the CSF present in the interpeduncular system situated between the temporal lobes may be involved. I said this before, Dave, and I'll say it again. I think in the actual world, in the real world, I think music is as pervasive as air and or wind, for that matter. So I think in our true home, I think there's this constant music, and maybe it's just the music of all living things, that all the frequencies, all the vibrations we are all of a sudden able to hear, if you know sort of what I mean. Anyway, a structure called the colliculus helps to orient the head to what is seen or heard. It receives visual and auditory stimuli and has sensory motor connections to assist with orienting movement. It surrounds the pineal gland and is activated by its secretions. As the pineal gland awakens, releasing biochemicals such as serotonin, tryptamine, pineoline, melatonin, or DMT, it affects the colliculus, which can explain some of the lights, visions, and celestial music that people report when the third eye is open and the crystal palace is active. Earlier, we mentioned that soft tissue dura mater connecting, the soft tissue dura mater connection between the cranium and the sacrum, the core link. For good flow in the physical body, there must be good connection and communication between heaven, the cranium, and earth, the sacrum. Spinal cord breathing is one of the best ways to awaken this connection and keep it healthy, and also has the added effect of inducing pineal gland activation. Spinal cord breathing enlivens the spine, promotes good range of motion and flexibility, activates the cranial and sacral pumps, and enhances the flow of cerebral spinal fluid, which in turn stimulates pineal gland activation. It also helps to relax the back muscles, so meditation is comfortable and increases the flow of qi through the spine. In modern life, many people work at a desk and sit for many hours a day, which is completely unnatural, of course. Additionally, many people also sit watching television or playing on the internet once they're at home. Yeah, that never happens. So much sitting hinders the motion of the sacrum and reduces flow. Spinal cord breathing is a great way to counteract the ill effects of prolonged sitting. So how do you do it? This is how you do it. Stand with your feet shoulder width apart and your knees slightly bent. It's sort of like the any martial arts beginning stance, any Tai Chi, any meditation stance. Feet shoulder width and slightly bent at the knees. Relax and begin to notice how you feel. Begin natural breathing. Just breathe normally. Then, on your next inhalation, keeping your elbows bent and your fingers toward the sky, bring your arms level with your shoulders and pull slightly back. Gently tilt your sacrum backwards, arching or arcing your spine. Open your chest and allow the rib cage to expand, activating the thymus and adrenal glands. Allow your head to drop backward and allow your jaw to soften. As you exhale, tilt your sacrum forward, tucking your tailbone and rounding your spine as if curling into a ball. Bring your elbows together in front of your chest and let your chin drop toward your chest as you lightly clench your teeth. You should repeat this between 9 and 18 times, and then return your head and spine to neutral and rest. Now, if you followed my description of these movements here, you might realize that if you do yoga, you're halfway there anyway, right? So all of the yoga movements that you might undertake are very much they were created for very much the same purpose, Dave, right? It's really, really important. Now, there's some final thoughts that we had at some point. Okay, now this is how we got last time, or time before even. The ultimate escape is only possible through complete understanding and cultivation of the pineal gland. That is the great work of the Buddhas and other enlightened, or what we call holy figures, I guess. Now, we're not the first to realize this, right? Not by any stretch of the imagination. This knowledge is thousands, maybe tens or hundreds of thousands of years old, and is being continuously suppressed, on occasion with deadly force, and we discussed this. The closer we get to the truth, the more frightened they become, the ominous they. So this is the truth. This is that truth. We are, all of us, ultimately capable of escape. Okay? Now, this is how far we got, like I said, in the past few show cycles. There's more, though. And we've discussed this epiphany. This is the reason why we're here. Now, we know how to get out of here, and that's all goodness, but why are we here? Why are we here? Now, I had an epiphany some time ago, last 2 years ago, I don't know. In order to understand the why, we need to talk about a couple of abstract and seemingly unrelated things, at least as far as the hypothesis is concerned. I don't know if we've got time for this, Dave. Do you think? Yeah, I think you can. I think you can make a good dent into quantum decoherence.
Quantum decoherence is the loss of quantum coherence. In quantum mechanics, particles such as electrons behave like waves and are described by a wave function. These waves can interfere with each other, leading to peculiar behavior of quantum particles. As long as there exists a definite phase relation between different states, the system is said to be coherent. This coherence is a fundamental property of quantum mechanics, and is necessary for the function of quantum computers. However, when a quantum system is not perfectly isolated, but in contact with its surroundings, the coherence decays with time, a process called quantum decoherence. As a result of this process, the quantum behavior is lost. Decoherence was first introduced in 1970 by the German physicist H. Dieter Zeh. Zeh? Is it Zeh? I don't know, Meki, you pronounce it better than I. See. There you go, completely different to me, and has been a subject of active research since the 1980s. Decoherence can be viewed as the loss of information from a system into the environment, often modelled as a heat bath or heat soak, since every system is loosely coupled with the energetic state of its surroundings. Viewed in isolation, the system's dynamics are non-unitary, although combined with system plus environment evolves in a unitary fashion. Meki.
Thus, the dynamics of the system alone are irreversible. As with any coupling, entanglements are generated between the system and environment. These have the effect of sharing quantum information with or transferring it to the surroundings. Decoherence has been used to understand the collapse of the wave function, which we've discussed ad nauseum with you guys in quantum mechanics. Decoherence does not generate actual wave function collapse. It only provides an explanation for the observation of wave function collapse, as the quantum nature of the system leaks into the environment. Let me say this again. Okay? Decoherence does not generate the actual wave function collapse. It is the action. It is the action of the collapse, but not an explanation. So we described it here as, but decoherence is not the explanation. It is just what happens. Okay. Decoherence has been that is components of the wave function are decoupled from a coherent system and acquire phases from their immediate surroundings. A total superposition of the global or universal wave function still exists. Okay, so it has decohered, but a total superposition still exists and remains coherent at the global level. But its ultimate fate remains an interpretational issue. Specifically, decoherence does not attempt to explain the measurement problem. Okay? Rather, decoherence provides an explanation for the transition of the system to a mixture of states that seem to correspond to those states observers perceive. Moreover, our observation tells us that this mixture looks like a proper quantum ensemble in a measurement situation. As we observed, that measurements lead to the realization of precisely one state in the ensemble. Again, okay, in the measurement that we observe leads to the creation, realization, the emergence of precisely one state in the previous ensemble or the global or universal wave function, right? Decoherence represents a challenge for the practical realization of quantum computers, since such machines are expected to rely heavily on the undisturbed evolution of quantum coherences. So what that means is, and I said this before, and this is really important to understand, a quantum computer can only function at a certain level, I think. As soon as we've figured out, right, how to build quantum computers, and we are there now, we're building quantum computers, we're trying to, right? Yeah. We will reach a certain size, and I mean the physical size of the quantum computer, at which point it will no longer function. And that is the border between the macro and the quantum. That, whatever that is, if it's, I don't know, it's 10 qubits, 50 qubits, 1,000 qubits, I have no idea, right? But we will know exactly where that borderline is.
40 qubits.
Now, it would be very, it'd be very interesting to see, or if the result were that there is no border. Wouldn't that be fascinating? Because we've now seen molecules responding, not atoms or particles, but molecules responding in a quantum fashion. Did you see that article? It was recently. I'm going to dig it up and make it part of the show cycle. Molecules now respond in the same way as electrons have.
That's right.
So photons, Photons, who cares? Photons are a wave anyway. Then we did the same thing with electrons, which arguably are the smallest building parts of matter. And all of a sudden, oh, shoot. That electron thing that works double slit. Now you can do double slit with molecules, Dave.
What?
Double slit.
I
with
know,
molecules.
right? I've given you the example of being able to do it with a grand piano, but no one's done it yet.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. As crazy as that sounds, you go fast enough, you can do it. Meki, I have to just remind everybody that the breaking down of the coherence is just the observance, and that's the thing that we need to honestly make sure everyone understands. That when you look at it to understand how it worked, this magical thing that you can't see, when you actually look to find what the answer was, it does exactly what we expect it to do. Is that not? It's still, to me, that's the craziest concept. And if we can do that at the molecule level, I'm sure it's going to be at the biological level.
Correct. That is correct. 100%. And this is the absurd. You see, I mean, why does decoherence occur at all? It makes no sense. Mm-hmm. Why does the wave function collapse? Because we look at it. What?
How does it know we're looking? How does it know we're looking, Meki?
Right? No, it's nuts. Right? Oops, is the music starting? I hope not.
Well, it shouldn't yet.
Okay,
There's still be 2 minutes left.
So just to go back to quantum computers for a second. So simply put, quantum computers require that coherent states be preserved and that decoherence is managed in order to actually perform quantum computation. Because if it decoheres, guess what? There's no more quantum computing. Because it decohered into the, well, we might as well just use a silicon, a binary computer, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1. We don't have time for any more, I guess, tonight.
Yeah.
There's next week, we're very close to the end of the show cycle, I should say. We will discuss it at length, I think. I think, Dave, that's something we should do with our esteemed listenership here. But it's really important to understand that all of the information here is freely available. Some of it is ours. We make leaps and jumps of faith and otherwise. But for the most part, most of the things that we talk about, you can research for yourselves. You can put them together or not, as the case may be. I think it is critical that you do put together the information and understand what it is we're talking about, understand why it matters, right, or not, to you maybe. I think it's critically important. I think this is all these things we talk about. These are the things that are important, not which sports team wearing a shirt has won, or which royal is leaving the family, or whatever the case may be. These are all red herrings. This stuff, honestly, as far as your existence is concerned, your actual, like your existence, your life, your maybe your many lives. This is the stuff that you should try to research and find out for yourselves. Don't just believe something because someone else believes it. Don't believe something because you're born into whatever family you're born into.
Inherited opinion.
Find out. Yeah, exactly. Find out. Exactly, Dave. Inherited opinion. Find out for yourself what it is. Go out there and ask questions. And soon you will find that you're not really welcome anymore in many places.
Yeah.
That's okay.
That's my family,
because
this,
right, well, sorry to hear that, but that's okay, because no one else is responsible for you but you. I'm pointing at all of you now, right? You are responsible for your life, and whatever comes of it, and how you live it, and how what maybe the next life, if that's a thing. So this is the important stuff.
These are only points on your clock. They're not points on other people's clocks. You don't get points for their stuff.
Yeah, the truth is this, right? In the greater context of the universe, you can't actually save anyone else.